So it's 9 o'clock and we'll still wait for the obligatory few minutes. We'll let people in. So more and more people are coming, and we will start soon with this super interesting program we have for you this morning. And yeah. And it's great to see that so many are on time. We are already 20 now. So we wait a little bit, then we start. If we have met on site, people would be going around talking to each other, but when you're on screen, never met anybody before, it's so silent that you can hear a needle falling, but it's no time to bad jokes. So just take a deep breath and relax, and soon you will be exploring new techniques, and you will be hearing about the consumer and the farmer's point of view. And we have just a super program for you. And I think now we will slowly start. And I will start with sharing my screen. So I hope that's okay for you. We have a few practical things also to tell. So of course. Yeah. So welcome and good morning to all of you, and welcome to this Bee Trust Masterclass. My name is Susanne Baden Jørgensen, and I'm from the Food and Bio Cluster Denmark, and we are partner in the EU project Bee Trust project. Okay, let's just let the rest come in. Oops. Just a few practical things. We will be recording this, so I hope you're okay. Please raise your hand or in the chat, or turn off your camera if you don't want the recording. And also please mute yourself if you're not speaking. And you can also choose to keep your camera either on and off. And if you have any questions during the presentations, please raise them in the chat, and we will present them either depending on the time in between the presentation or at the end. So let's get started here. So in this masterclass, we will explore solution for climate resilient crops. As climate changes increases and food demand grows, we have to look into new breeding method for the agriculture. New genomic techniques like CRISPR offer faster, more precise breeding method compared to the traditional techniques. And these advancements have the potential to be a game changer for the agriculture while reducing the environmental impact. But what about the legislation, and what about the consumers and the farmers? Consumer perception of the gene editing is evolving, with growing optimism about its role in sustainability and the food security. And in this masterclass, we will also take a deep dive into how the farmers and the consumers view these innovations, and how do they feel about it. So as you can see from the program, this will be the topics of today, and we are thrilled to have leading expert from the EU project, Darwin Project, which is a Norwegian research institute. And from Germany, we have the Justus-Liebig Universität. And from Denmark, we have the Danish Seed Association. And then two partners in the Bee Trust project, Alice Down the Rabbit Hole and Flanders Food. They're here with us today to guide us and to share their insights. So let's get started. But, oops, is this the wrong way? I would just like to introduce you to the Bee Trust project, because this is one of the reasons why we're here today. Biotechnology plays a key role in shaping the future of European agriculture and bio-based industries. However, the low public acceptance creates hesitation in the industry, but also uncertainty to the investors. And it also slows down the regulatory changes needed for the implementation. So the objective of the project is to create a clear and open decision-making system that supports the use of biotechnology in farming, food production, and bio-based industries. This approach will help business stay competitive while also protecting the environment, strengthen the economy, and benefiting society as a whole. Plus, it aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but also the EU. And we are 7 partners in this project, and as you can see, here are the clusters from Denmark and from Spain and from Belgium. We have research institutes and SMEs as well. So together we have a number of activities. As I said, the governance model, that will be developed a formulation of the theory of change. All our activities are also based on 6 specific biotech co-creation cases, and to go public, so to speak, we are organizing workshop with co-creation and co-design, and also these 8 masterclasses, which is number 3 in a row of 6. And I think we can just show an overview. This is number 3, but we also have installed more which gives you this overview, and you, of course, welcome to join you joined already the forum, but you can see each masterclass on the forum when they're up as well. Okay. So now we start with the speakers, and the first speaker is from the Darwin Project. It's Odd-Gunnar Wikmark from the Norse, the research director. Sorry. Sorry about that. It's Odd-Gunnar Wikmark from the research director, gene technology from the Environment and Society from the Norse Institute. So please, I will stop sharing, and Odd-Gunnar, it's the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. Do you see this okay? Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and I'm very excited, of course, to speak about Darwin, which I obviously think is a splendid project. And I'm also happy to see that there are other partners in Darwin as well that we'll hear later on in this program, particularly on the consumer's point of view, which we think is paramount in Darwin. So I just have a few slides to say something about my research institute. We are an independent research institute that we do research in many areas: energy technology, health and society, climate and environment. So you can see the different types of research that's being done there. So it's quite big. It's actually Norway's 2nd biggest research institute. around 800 employees, 50 nationalities, and a lot of turnover. These numbers are actually a little bit old, so they are probably even higher now. I don't really have the current number. Norse is located in Bergen, Tromsø, but this is Tromsø, which my research group is located at. And as you can see, the environment there is radically different from many other places in Europe, which I think illustrates very well what we are talking about when you talk about environmental impact and the NGTs and GMOs. It's very different. The perspective is very different from the different regions that you are from. So yeah, we still have a lot of snow, sadly, but that's how it is. My research group is called Gene Technology, Environment and Society, or GEMS for short. We are located, as I said, in Tromsø, around about 11 researchers. And we are also, in addition to doing research on gene technology and development of this methodology, we also are a national competence center for what we call biosafety, where we do research and advice on environment, health, and societal impacts on the use of gene technologies and gene modifications. So we get our funding from the government to do that, to ensure the safe use of biotech. So it's important that you remember that perspective also, that it's we are not necessarily only focused on development CRISPR-Cas technology, but also very much tune into the risk assessment side of it and knowledge gaps and so forth through this mandate. So that's I guess a good piece of information for you to have. Right. So Darwin. So the title of this talk is that if new genomic techniques can foster the transition to a more sustainable and fair food systems. And then I will go on to present the Darwin Project, which is in a sense developing new detection methods for NGT products. So I will try to build up a little bit of a narrative to show you where we think Darwin fits into this picture of sustainable and fair food systems. And that obviously depends on how you define sustainable and fair. So if you, for instance, look at this farm to fork strategy in the European Green Deal, there are certain key elements that comes up there, and I've highlighted two here, which I think where detection is quite important and will play a role almost regardless of the regulatory status of NGT. It's of course protecting the environment and preserve biodiversity. Then you need to know something about what's out there. You need to know something about spread and also something about risk maybe, but also this increase organic farming. And I will show you my line of thought there. There is also, this is also is a flyer and there are several points here, but the point I would like to highlight is that it's being put forward that organic farming is environmental friendly and it should be further developed, and that the Commission will try to boost the organic farming area to achieve at least 25% of total farmland under organic farming by 2030. So there is a push for organic farming, which is important to remember. Quite recently, there was the EU Council reached a position on NGTs before entering into this trialogue and finding how the final regulation should be. I won't go through all of that, of course, but in essence, it's dividing into two categories, NGT 1s and 2, where but also it's a recognition that NGT plants will be prohibited in organic production. And that's a very strong argument, I think, to still have detection and available, because if you want to prohibit something, you really need to know what to look for and how to exclude it. Also, adoption of coexistence measures at national level so that it's possible to grow non-GMOs alongside GMOs, so in the same area. And also very important is that herbicide tolerance is always going to be regulated and traced and have authorization procedures, regardless on which NGT methods being used in production of that herbicide tolerance. Now, a practical example of that is really this hibiscus rapeseed, which is already developed and with a very, very small change. The genome is quite large, 12 12,000 million base pairs, 12,000 million letters, if you like, in a library, in a book. And if 2 of them are changed, then you have herbicide tolerance. So this is one of the smallest changes we can think of when it comes to new genomic techniques, is 1 or 2 letters that have been changed, and this now needs to be detected, traced, and labeled according to this suggestion, because it's a herbicide tolerant trait. So that means that detection is important for excluding products from organic farming, but also from excluding herbicide crops. So there is a detection method available for Siberian rapeseed. It's not really as robust as it needs to be in order to be approved. And if you can detect the change, you still cannot say how it occurred. Was it really an NGT, or was it a spontaneous mutation? So that's a problem that we are facing in the world of detections here. So a lot of the NGTs have very small changes. I would like to say that many NGTs, maybe most, will have large changes. So that will be much easier to detect if you take away 10 base pairs or 20 base pairs, 20 letters, if you like, then that is much more easier to detect than if you change just 1. And today, GMOs rely on validated detection methods through this European network of GMO detection laboratories. And that is based on producers' information. So again, and today also, we need to know what to look for in order to find it. Yeah, so they've been done some work on this for some time. This is a publication from 2019. And also there's been a continuous focus on these NGTs, of course. So for non-NGTs, a typical GMO setup, what does it look like? Well, I won't go through this in a lot of detail, but in essence, what you do is that you look for an element that is common in many GMOs and see if it's there, then this is a GMO. If it's not, then this pile of samples or shipment of grain is negative, and there's no requirement for GMO labeling. But again, it's dependent on a priori knowledge of what to look for. If you don't know these common elements, then if you don't set up your test right, then you won't find anything. Very similar, I guess, to what it is today as well. But there is one or some big differences, of course, is that all the GMOs had very large insertions, many thousand base pairs, and there were genes from other species involved. So that is, of course, makes it much more easy to figure out where the origin of these sequences that you find are. And you can and you can say with 100% certainty that this is a GMO if you find these constructs that have been reported. Okay, so this is an example from a project and a publication that we did, and just to illustrate that NGTs, as you can see, the lower line here is the NGT, where they're missing only 3 base pairs. And then, of course, detection becomes quite difficult, as I've said numerous of times. We did some investigations around this. I think I have it's a little bit later, and we'll come a little bit back to that. But just to sum up this detection of gene-edited organisms, is that today, currently must be approved in EU and will therefore have unknown elements that has to be reported and has to be submitted along with the detection setup. Then it can be systemized and screened for, but again, this problem is to distinguish naturally occurring mutations from NGTs is very relevant. You can see a change, but where does it come from? How does it happen? It's much more difficult to say. Okay, I can skip that in the interest of time. So that brings us to Darwin, which has a quite long title, but the underlying thing here is what I want to highlight here. It's new and innovative development of new and innovative detection methods in order to overcome some of these problems. And the background for Darwin is a project that we have called Footprint, which is about traceability and labeling of gene-edited products in the food chain. So you can see on the left here, this funnel is how the GMO detection is being built today, where it's a really targeted detection. You know what to look for. You go in there and you will see if it's there or not. While Footprint are exploring a more open approach to this, there are multiple targets that you want to assess, and together the combination of all of this could tell you something about the presence or not of NGTs or GMOs. Important to all of that is how you design your primers, and that you do a very good bioinformatic analysis first, so you know a lot about the variability in the gene pool for that species. If you're looking for a change that already occurs in nature, then that's a much more complex if this change is unique to NGT, this particular NGT you're looking for. So from the previous example that I've shown, if the 3 base pairs is something that is common along this Arabidopsis species, then you will see this, even if you see it, it will be difficult to say where it's from. But if it's unique, only made by NGTs, we can't find it elsewhere, then it's much more easier. So there is different levels of information there, which you can influence and aid this setup, these tests. Okay, so the work package of Darwin looks like this. And I'm glad that Laura will talk about this consumer part of it. I will mainly focus on what this here is work package 2, a little bit on 3 and a little bit on 4. 2 is where we develop the methods. 3 is where we're making a genetic fingerprint, which is a key component to this. And 4 is where we validate this to make sure it's up to standards so it can be used in a detection scheme in Europe, or in the world, I guess. So we do have 2 different approaches here. One is where we know what to look for. We know that this change that we are looking for is there. We'll try to find it. What is the limits? Or we don't know it's there, but we know the change we're looking for, basically. So then we use these PCR methods, which is not new, but as the development of NGT techniques are going forward, so is also PCR and detection methods being improved. So there is, you can, when you design this, we would like to try enhancing both the enzymes and also the primers and probes used in the system in order to make it more specific. So that's quite technical and under development, so I won't talk too much about that now, but we are trying the latest technology in combinations to see if we can make this more robust and if we can increase the detection limit or lower the detection limit. Okay, but then the problem is still there. Still, if you find it, how do you know it's a NGT and not a natural occurring mutations? So how to distinguish SNPs, which is, well, SNPs we call them, these NGTs variations that you see from naturally occurring mutations. And in this setup, we are applying whole genome sequencing as a technique. So we are looking at different areas under the idea that when you use CRISPR on a crop, there is certain requirements for where it should cut. And also sometimes you can create off-target effects. And also there's some species variability. And if you look analyzing enough of this data, and we also have this machine learning and AI tools implementing that, we can build up for specific lines, we can build up a genetic fingerprint so that it becomes unique. So when you see this change and under this variety, and also maybe close to a certain PEM sites, then you could say that then it's a NGT line of this sort, and you can use that in further seek for in an unknown C pool, unknown gene pool. Sorry. Also, not only single samples or single seeds are important, but we need to look at mixtures, and it's the same idea. But also here the read quality, how much should we sequence, how much should we cover of the genome are important elements to take into considerations, and also the different sites that should be detected, that we will detect, and to create this unique fingerprint for this line if we can detect it in there. So this requires a lot of information about the whole genome sequence of crops, whole genome sequence of different variants, not only the well, if it's rice, not only the certain rice line that's been edited, but also other rice lines, what does the normal variability look like? And trying to combine all of this information into a fingerprint. Right. There is also a part where we look at some bioinformatics, of course, a lot of bioinformatics analysis, where we are ensuring that the information is traced throughout the food chain or the value chain. The genetic information follows the product, so to speak. There's also this AI tool set in how to develop these fingerprints and how to make this accessible also for other people and not only for researchers at the end. That's sort of the end goal here. But we also need to validate this, and there is strict procedures for that. So for validated targeted methods, so when you know what to look for, but in this fingerprint ID, there is no specific criteria developed yet. So we will need to develop some criteria for making it as robust as possible, and that will be tested in Darwin. So it's important for us that the knowledge that we create is going to be made available for the general public or for the authorities. Yeah, so I'm getting very close to the end here. The expected outputs is that we will be able to detect or make reliable detection methods to address the challenges that's described. Development and validation of detection tools for enforcement authorities, as well for developers and agri-food operators. We would like to empower these actors and for authenticity and traceability of products obtained through entities, and that we believe will enable informed consumer choices by enhancing transparency and traceability across the food chain, and also enable innovations in the food systems linked to NGTs. Yeah, Darwin has this partner, and it's a big EU project, of course, and you are, of course, very welcome to follow us on LinkedIn, and you can see the webpage, and you also have a Blue Sky account. Or you can write me, of course, that's my email address. Yeah, with that, I would just say thank you for your attention, and I hope I'm approximately close to the time.
You're fine, Odd-Gunnar. Thank you so much for this super interesting introduction. When does this project end? Or how long are you in the process of conducting all the research and so the testing?
Yeah, it's going along, and we have been at it for approximately 1 year, so 2.5 more years for it.
All right.
So
Okay.
yeah. So we're hoping to chew out the first publications in not the distant future that could at least take us part of the step. I don't think I would like to say that this is the end solution for everything, but it's definitely a solid first step and a solid approach for some of the entities. So it's not like one set of shoes will fit all. I don't think that's the case. So we have to go by it or develop as we go along.
Super. I just want to know if there would be any questions in the chat. We may have one or two, maybe. Yes. There is one question. Let me just check.
Yeah, there's a question about cost for this technique, and that's a very good question. And we have to say that currently it's probably a high cost if you think you want to implement this on a regular basis. But technology is like that. When the demand goes up, also the cost tends to go down. So it's like when we started doing GMO testing, the first expensive, a lot of work. Now it's much more easier. So I think this is the same situation here as well.
Yes. Okay, super. Thank you very much. Oh, there was one more. Maybe we just have time for this. I don't, can you see?
I can see it. So the question is, what is target species, major differences between lines and family breeding? I'm not sure I grasp all of that, but the idea is to build up specific databases for specific lines. We are working, starting with rice and tomatoes. for different reasons.
Yeah.
Because well, rice is quite well described in literature. There's a lot of genetic information available, but tomato is not. So that sort of creates two polar or opposite point of views in order to get information from literature, which is out there already. So there are major differences between line. Yes, I can't really answer that. I'm sure some will have differences and some won't, but the idea is to pinpoint the differences and tie them to the different lines.
Thank you so much. I think we will move on. If you have anything to share, we have this community platform. We will be able to, if you have reports or anything, just contact us and we'll can share some exchange of information.
Yeah.
So the next on stage, or the E-stage, so to call, is Nils Elmegaard. He's the senior consultant at the Danish Agriculture and Food Council, but also chair in the Danish Seed Association. Nils will talk about CRISPR is at the new frontiers of seed innovation. So Nils, welcome, and please share your screen.
Yes, thank you very much. I will share my screen, put it in presentation mode. Is it there now? Yes. So first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to take part of this discussion and exchange of information. Like Odd-Gunnar, I will also start introducing what is really the Danish Seed Council and the Seed Association and all those organizations. Sometimes it's important to know what is the background. And maybe Odd-Gunnar, you are the researcher and I'm more like a commercial input. Maybe some people will recognize me as the bad guy, but I will try to explain how it looks from our side, from the industry and farmers side. So the Danish Seed Council, I will start explaining what is this. We have 50 years of history. We started, well, that was before my time, but when we joined the European Union, which was called something else at that time, we formed this council. So it only have two members, really. We have the Seed Association, which comprises of the seed companies, and it's all the way from breeding to marketing, you can say. And then you have the seed growers. So those two organizations are together. It's an umbrella organization, you can say. So more or less you have the whole value chain within or around the same table. And that is built on trust. If you don't have trust between the members, you're not getting anywhere. So we're also a member of the Danish Agriculture and Food Council, which is sort of a larger umbrella organization for all Danish farmers and their co-ops. We get our funding from the seed growers, actually, according to some old agreements between the farmers, which are the growers, seed growers, and the seed companies. And that's been working for 50 years. So the growers will pay 0.2% of their production value every year to run the council. And the council is rather small, I can say. It's only me. And what am I doing? Of course, my main tasks are to try to improve the Danish seed platform or production platform, you can say. Could be anything to do with nitrogen or pesticides or anything else. And maybe I will take this opportunity also because Odd-Gunnar, he pointed out on the organic production that we are also comprising the organic seed production. So we are more or less having a simple approach. We say the market rules, and we know there are some political goals to reach a certain amount of organic production, but we are more looking at, sorry to say, reality, because we can only produce that much seed as we can sell. it's quite simple. But we don't look at if it's conventional or organic. We try to follow both markets. Also, we collect the funds for research and development within our sector, with the seed sector, and we are very much active in the international organizations. I have mentioned the three most important here on the screen. Euroseeds, which is the seed industry of Europe, Copa Coseca, which is the farmers and co-ops and organization which comprises of most farmers and co-ops in Europe. ISF is the International Seed Federation, which is a global seed industry organization. So because I have the growers and the companies to look for, we are also in those different organizations that take care of different issues for these groups. Just very short that to say that Denmark is it is a seed nation, you can say. We are, when it comes to grasses, we are the main exporter in the world of grasses to temperate climate zones. Usually we produce seed on 80 to 100,000 hectares in Denmark every year, and we have approximately 50-60% market share in the EU. And the seeds are used for fodder purposes, mainly for feeding cows and horses and sheep and whatever. And also the turf section is quite big. Also, besides the grasses and clovers, we also produce a lot of, you can say, vegetable seeds. And here, spinach seed is the most important one, with approximately 10,000 hectares a year, which produces enough seed to have 75% of the world market. Most of the seeds are used for baby leaves. I'm sure you know that when you go to the shops, you can buy those. No, something is wrong. There you go. Just a very short overview. What are the main crops we are producing in Denmark? In grasses, the most important species would be Lolium perenne, which is also the largest of the grass species in the world. We also have Poa pratensis, which is very important to Denmark and mainly used for turf purposes. We have red fescue, of course, Fescue rubra, which is important in both in fodder and in amenity grasses. And we have tall fescue, which is the name there, and we have Dactylis, which is couch grass. And also we have white clover, which is a very important product also for feeding cows. And here is a picture of the spinach seed we produce. It's a hybrid spinach seed, almost everything. So it means you have male lines and female lines. It's a long discussion. We can go past that. And then we have chives as an example. We have some like 20 different other seed crops that we produce. It's a beautiful sight when you go around the Danish agricultural land to see some of these fields. Anyway, now to the point. Why do we need NGT and why do we need better varieties? It's a ever-returning issue that we need these new varieties for the farmers to produce more resilient crops and to have higher yields perhaps, or to make use of the inputs in a better way. But the overall goal, whatever we use, new varieties or new genomic techniques, if we cannot produce clean, high quality and certified seed, we don't have a place on the market. It's as simple as that. And that goes for commercial production as well as not commercial. And it's organic as well as non-organic. So it's the same issue there. If you cannot produce the high quality, well, you don't have a place on the market. One of our main issues and why we need NGT is that we have less plant protection products, PPPs as we call them, and we use PPPs to control weeds and pests and plant diseases. And very short, I can say that with NGT we not expect to do any weed control with the NGTs. Pests, different insects which cause problems in the production, maybe not, but plant diseases, that's where we see the major possibilities for the seed production to use new NGT varieties. And also in general, as you all know, we have changing weather conditions. The last 2 years in Denmark has been not so good. 23 was bad, but it's like that all over Europe, that some years you see good years and some years you see bad years. And all we ask for is this year to be normal. That would be so nice. And there are other possibilities with NGT also. Maybe the composition of amino acids or proteins in general could be interesting in the future. But when it comes to weeds and pests, we have to find other solutions. So we see NGT as a major opportunity, but it's not the answer to everything. And then also I would like to point out that in the EU, we're not an island. I mean, now, and we have been for decades, we have been the seed basket of the world. We export a lot of seeds to within EU and outside EU. And of course, as a seed producing country, we would like to stay that way. So we need to be on the same level as our competitors. And then lately also on the political side, you can say that it's you mentioned Odd-Gunnar in the beginning about the new strategy, the old commission put forward farm to fork strategy, but now it's a new commission and maybe things in a global perspective have changed a little bit or quite a lot. Perhaps maybe we look more now to have food supply security. So that opens up to new possibilities, new demands. Very short, I'm not an expert on how to detect NGTs or how it's done in practice, but as with a farming background, I do understand a little bit. And we have on this picture, maybe you can see here that the random mutation, that's what we do now in the plant breeding. And you want in the breeding process to create diversity, because you need diversity to make selections. Then you make crossing and selections, and then you find, or hopefully find, some new and better varieties. What we're looking at here is that the new NGT, and we are mostly looking at NGT1, which we, and also EFSA agrees that this is similar to what we do already. Now we do to create a random mutation, we can use chemical agents or we can use radiation. But now we ask for precision breeding methods like, for instance, CRISPR-Cas. And that could be within the NGT1 part, which is, I would say, is the same as what we do already, or even more precise, because you can find the exact gene that you want to be expressed. All the other parts to the right of this, that will be more or less NGT2 and GMO. We are not that interested in that. And also, if you ask the farmers, I think most of them will stay out here. And maybe I can bring forward here a comment that maybe you are not too happy to hear, but if, as Odd-Gunnar rightly pointed out, the organic farmers are to be excluded from NGT new varieties, and I think in the long run that will put them in a difficult situation, because reality now is that those varieties that the organic farmers are using are bred by the, you can say, the existing system. So the varieties the organic farmers are using are actually the same varieties that the non-organic farmers are using. So in the future, if you get new varieties by NGT, then the organic farmers will not have access to that. They will not have those varieties that could have better resistance against fungus, or maybe better roots, or things like that. So it will put the organic farming in a difficult situation in a few years. That's what I think. Anyway, I should be careful. Time is running. But how much time do I have? Oh, I have to speed up. Sorry. So many things to say. I have from Universität received a few examples of NGT. What can it be used for? What are the possibilities? And it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, since right now NGTs is looked at as GMOs within the European context. Of course, we would like to have this new file on NGT pushed forward, so we can use it also. So there will be a much more examples in the future. But here are just a few examples about how you can create smaller potatoes. I think I'll move further on. Some wheat, not wheat, but wheat products, you can have a problem with acrylamide, and with these new methods, you can actually get rid of those, or at least get it to a lower level, which will help the public to avoid acrylamide, which is not wanted in your food. So that's another example. Also, I think, as I said in the beginning, I think where we see the best possibilities will be fungi, how to control fungi. And here's an example of wheat, and you can see here's some yellow disease, which is very, very poor, or very bad for wheat production. You can lose 30 to 50% of production by this disease. If you can use NGTs to increase the resistance, then you can use less fungicides. So it's that will be a good opportunity to use less PPPs. And another example is the pods in the rape production, that you can produce new varieties that keeps the pods closed until you get there with the harvester, so you don't lose the seeds underground. It can also improve production. And here's an example from Sweden, where they're working with new with starch in potatoes, and I think I like this bottom part, which is important to point out that there is a difference between NGTs, or NBTs as we used to call them, and GMO, and we should make use of these opportunities. That's what I think, and that's what my organization think. To come to the farmers, maybe this looks a little bit confusing, but the farmers, when they have to choose the seeds, and I've taken here a couple of screenshots from a database which the farmers have access to. So if they want to buy a new variety of wheat, in this case, they can see different wheats. Now it's a wheat variety called Boone, and then they can see what is the yield and what is the weight and protein and and resistance against different diseases and so on and so forth. So I believe in the future, when we have NGTs, we should also, in a system like this, you'll be able to see as a farmer, is this developed by NGT or not? And if it is, maybe you decide I don't want it, perhaps if you are organic farmer. So that possibility will be there. So just to sum up, it is precision breeding as opposite to what we are doing now, that we are like shooting with a shotgun, and now we need to use a rifle so we can get the exact change that we want. And we don't see any change from what we do now, and then NGT1 at least. NGT2 most likely will be handled like a GMO, but NGT1 is no different from what we do already. And I believe EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, have the same result there. Just to bring you back, if I may use half a minute more, that is, it's not a world that is not moving. We have moved and made changes for 10,000 of years since we started being farmers, and we will not stop. We have to go on, and we will have to use those methods and possibilities that we have. And as already was pointed out, the need for food or the food security is rather important. I think in Europe we are rich. We are okay. We can live without it perhaps, but we need it still. And just from the yesterday or the day before, yesterday, yes, in the paper, there was one company that was highlighted that they want to use NGT to make potatoes free from late blight. So that's another possibility. Yes, I think I made it to the end, and sorry if I went a little bit over time.
I think all presentations are so full of vital information, so I think we will overcome the delay. Thank you so much, Nils. We're running a little out of time, so if anyone has a question, please use the chat, and otherwise I will say very much thank you, Nils. It was very nice to also have the commercial side, so to speak, or the market side of the new frontiers of the seed innovation. So thank you so much. There is no question, so we'll move on, because now we will turn to the consumer perspective. And we are also turning to our good friends in the Darwin Project to highlight and to explore the consumer acceptance of food from these new techniques. So please welcome Laura Krumm. She is the doctoral researcher from the Justus-Liebig Universität from Giessen. Laura, warm welcome, and the floor is yours, so please share the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I hope you can now see
it's
the
fine.
screen.
Yes, super.
Perfect. So yes, also good morning everyone from me, and thank you for having me here as a speaker at this masterclass. My name is Laura Krumm. I'm a doctoral researcher at the Justus-Liebig University in Giessen. And together with our team in Giessen and with our partners from the Institute of Agri-Food Research and Technology in Spain, we are part of the Darwin Project, where we focus on understanding consumer perspectives in relation to NGT food. And today I'm going to present to you some first insights from a survey we have conducted. So I don't think I need to introduce the project again, as you have already heard the presentation of Odd-Gunnar, which makes it easier for me, and I can immediately jump to the consumer perspective. But before jumping to the specific work we do, I want to quickly argue why consumer perspective matters when it comes to NGT food or technology in general. First, of course, consumer attitudes are important from a policy perspective. Consumer perceptions influence policies on many levels, be it EU levels, be it national levels, or even regional. And it's important to ensure that policies align with public expectations. Second, it is, of course, also important from an industry perspective, because no matter how advanced or beneficial NGTs are or other technologies, they must meet consumer expectations and values to be commercially viable, because the industry must ensure that innovations align with what consumers are willing to accept and purchase, as Nils has already mentioned in his presentation as well. And the third point, which is, I think, very on topic for today's masterclass, understanding and listening to consumers is essential for maintaining and building trust in science and policy. So what were actually our aims when we conducted the survey? What did we want to know? We formulated 2 research questions. The first one is, what are consumers' attitudes towards NGT food? What do consumers actually think? Do they accept food from these new technologies? From previous research, we know that overall, consumers tend to associate more negative than positive attributes to GMO or NGT foods. However, this varies between different processes of gene technologies. Some studies have already found that, for example, 3rd generation of GMO technology, and also some very new studies with NGT show that those technologies might be more accepted than older technologies. But as these technologies are still very new, we will need more studies to understand this better. And there are also cross-country differences when it comes to attitude and acceptance, both between continents. So, for example, traditionally in the US, acceptance is higher compared to Europe, but also within Europe, there are cross-country differences. Then for our second research question, we want to understand what factors correlate with NGT attitudes and acceptance, because we want to help us understand what could potential underlying mechanisms be. Why is there, why do people think what they think? So to kind of get us more into the area of understanding what is going on. And here we focus on 3 different groups of factors. The first one is perceived risks and benefits associated with NGT foods. Here I want to stress that we're talking about perceived risks and benefits. So we are not natural scientists. We cannot assess the actual risks and benefits of these technologies, but we focus on what consumers actually perceive, what they think risks and benefits are, or like how big these risks and benefits are. And we know from previous research that risks and benefits do play a role. And also they differ between countries and over time, the same as attitudes and acceptance. One fact that I found interesting is that the perception of risks and benefits tend to be contagious across attributes. So if someone perceives GMO food or NGT food to be safe to eat, they likely also will perceive them as safe for the environment and vice versa. So there's a contagion going on here. Then the second group of factors we are interested in is knowledge. So how much does it change attitudes and acceptance, or is there a different relationship depending on how much people actually know about these technologies? We distinguish here between 2 types of knowledge. The first one is objective knowledge, which we measure. You can compare it to a test at school, basically, where we give our participants a quiz, and then with a number of different statements, and they have to say which of these statements is true and false. And in the end, we say basically how much of the questions have been answered correctly, and that is how we conceptualize objective knowledge. And then we also look at subjective knowledge, which is how much do consumers actually think they know about NGT food. So it's an important distinction. And also here, previous research shows that generally consumer knowledge about genetic techniques is low, which makes sense because it's very advanced technological processes. but also varies between education levels and countries. And previous research has also found that objective and subjective knowledge matter when it comes to risk-benefit perceptions, attitudes, and acceptance. Scientific evidence, however, is still inconsistent. And lastly, the last group we want to look at is the group of heuristics and automatic processes. Because as we also know from research, knowledge is not everything. We know that a lot of decisions that we make in our daily lives are based on automatic mechanisms or effective mechanisms. We don't have the capacity to really think through every single decision we do. So a lot of that is automatic. And in this realm of factors, we focus on three. The first one is affect or emotions. So what emotions do consumers have when they think about NGT food? And does that have a relationship with its attitude? Second, we focus on trust, because previous research has found that trust is especially important in situations where people lack knowledge. And as I already talked to you earlier, this is one of the situations where there is generally low knowledge. So trust may actually play a big role here. And with trust, we mean trust in a number of different institutions, be it regulatory institution on EU level or national level, be it trust in producers, in retailers, in universities, in consumer organizations, so in a pretty long list of institutions. And lastly, we look at naturalness in food. And here we mean both how important is natural food to consumers, and also how natural do consumers perceive NGT food to be. And also here we know from previous research that naturalness in food is very important to consumers, and that natural foods often are also automatically perceived as healthier and tastier, as well as better for the environment. So what did we do? How did we approach this research endeavor? We did a representative survey in Spain and Germany. Why Spain and Germany? First of all, this is where our research, our environments are located. So we are in Germany and Rijckaert is in Spain. And this, of course, has some advantages with language, etc., when formulating a survey. But additionally to that, traditionally Germany and Spain are on opposing ends of the spectrum of GMO acceptance in Europe, with Spain being one of the countries which is most accepting of GMO traditionally, whereas Germany is on the end of being less accepting. And we found this difference very interesting to understand, to also maybe dig a little bit deeper and where do Germany and Spain differ? And could this potentially also explain the difference in attitude and acceptance? We collected a sample with 1,000 participants per country. These samples were representative by age, sex, education, and region. Data collection took place at the end of last year. So it's still pretty fresh. That's why I say it's also the first results. We are still in the process of analyzing this data. The data has been collected together with the Market Research Institute, Kantar. And additionally to these representative surveys, we also collected data from additional subsamples of consumers with a background in life sciences. And there we collected 100 people per country. The rationale for this was, as I stated earlier, we expected knowledge to be pretty low based on previous research. And we wanted to, or our hope was to, with this approach, to have some more people in there with maybe higher knowledge levels, so we can actually understand whether that has an effect. So kind of that was the idea to include this additional subsample. And this research has been pre-registered and ethically approved. So now going to the first results. So first research questions, what are consumer attitudes and acceptance toward NGT food? So first I want to start with acceptance. So we measured acceptance by asking, in general, do you accept the application of new genomic techniques to the production of food? So very general question. people could answer on a 7-point Rijckaert scale, ranging from no acceptance to very high acceptance. And this is the distribution of results that we find. The mean is 3.99, which is basically right in the middle of the scale. So this is why we interpret this as moderate acceptance of NGT food. So it's not extreme in any direction, I would say. So of course we can only speculate why that is. One reason could be that people maybe are not entirely sure yet what to think about NGTs. I think a lot of people maybe have not heard a lot about it yet. So maybe that's kind of a reason why it's pretty in the middle. But of course, we don't really know why, or cannot really explain. We do find, as expected, that the acceptance is higher in Spain compared to Germany. And we do find that acceptance is higher in our additional subsample with people with the life science background compared to the representative samples. The pattern for attitudes looks actually very similar to acceptance. Here we have basically a really similar mean of 3.95, so also very much in the middle of the scale. And also the same pattern when it comes to Spain versus Germany, and also the subsample versus our representative sample. So no surprises. So now looking more into the relationships with the factors, starting with perceived risks and benefits. So we do find also the basically relationships as we expected. So we do find a negative significant relationship between risk perceptions and attitude and acceptance. So basically these models, everything I show you from now on is based on multiple regression models, and these are standardized regression coefficients. And we do find the positive relationship between benefit perceptions and attitude and acceptance. So the more risky I perceive NGT food, then this is associated with a lower attitude. And the other way around, the more beneficial I perceive it, this is associated with a higher attitude and acceptance. What I find really interesting here is how much larger the effect size is for benefit perception versus risk perception. So it seems that when it comes to kind of benefits, is more important in forming attitudes compared to risks. And I want to stress here, of course, we cannot make any causal inferences here because it's just a survey. But the associations are a lot higher with benefits. Then we look at knowledge. Here we find, so just to quickly stress, we also distinguish between subjective and objective knowledge. And then we also distinguish objective knowledge, again, in knowledge about actual GMOs or GM technology, and also more general genetics knowledge. For example, knowledge generally about how the DNA works. So because we wanted to see whether that distinction has an effect. And we do find that all three measures of knowledge have a significant positive relationship with both attitude and acceptance. Interestingly, we find the strongest relationship with subjective knowledge, which is basically where people assess themselves how much they know. This is the most important here when it comes to attitude and acceptance. And lastly, we look at the heuristics and automatic processes. Here we have two measures of trust, which is the first was trust in the competence of a number of institutions. And then we also asked trust in whether these institutions have the best interest of the public in mind. And the results for these two trust measures have actually been very similar. And I think this is why we find the results that we find, because now we find a significant positive relationship between trust in the competence of institution with attitude and acceptance, but no effect for social trust, which is the trust in best interest, which I can explain that is just pretty similar results. We do find the strongest effect for naturalness perception. So the more natural it is perceived, the higher the attitude and acceptance is, we find a positive relationship for effect and a small, weak, negative effect for natural importance. So the more important natural is to me, the lower is attitude and acceptance. So to summarize, moderate level of NGT food and acceptance. So it could be that people are unsure and do not yet have strong opinions or know what to think. We do find perceived benefits have a stronger relationship than perceived risks. And the strongest relationships are found for perceived benefits, subjective knowledge, naturalness perception, trust in institutions, and effect. So that was it. Thank you so much.
Super, thank you, Laura. Nils has a question. Nils, would you like to ask it in open?
Yes, I would like to do that. Thank you very much, Laura. It's very interesting to see the consumer, how they understand our NGTs and everything else. My question is a little bit provoking, I think. I say, if you ask a consumer, what do you think of DNA in your food? What do you expect would be the answers in that case?
I mean, all food has DNA, right? So I actually don't, this would only be speculation. So what we did, we know that people are not really sure about what NGTs are. So we actually gave them a definition before asking these questions. But of course, I agree that because also I think because it is a very specific topic, GMO discussions have been, I think, very much in the media like 20 years ago, but NGTs is pretty new. So it could be that if I just answer a question, I would expect maybe acceptance would be lower. But that is just, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I don't know, but it's just to try to put it into perspective, because at least we talked to one MEP or MP here in Denmark, and she was asked, do you need to know as a consumer if it's NGT food or not? And she said, no, consumers, they don't understand the difference between what is in their food, so they don't need to know. And she was left wing, so that was quite interesting, I think.
I mean, I think that's a question that research not necessarily, that we can't really answer with research. I would argue it is important for consumers to know, and that maybe it's more of a question of increasing knowledge and increasing awareness of it. But as I said, this is more of a political debate than something that we can answer with the survey. Yeah. But thank you. It's a very interesting question.
It's highly interesting. And thank you so much, Laura, for sharing the primary result. And we will be looking forward. There's a question whether you will carry out other analysis, and when do you expect the data to be published?
We will take up, so this is basically just a very, also because I only had 15 minutes, I wanted to make sure it's kind of easy to present. We have some more detailed models that we want to test with basically all of the variables in there, and some moderation effects and also some demographics as controls. So we will dig deeper in this, and hopefully we will have a report, so the analysis finished probably sometime this year, and then published in a journal hopefully beginning next year. So but we'll see. But I can keep you posted on our progress.
All right. Okay, thank you ever so much. And we will go to another insight. And in the Bee Trust project, we have some excellent partners. And I would like to welcome Veerle Rijckaert very much from the Alice Down the Rabbit Hole. She's the co-founder. Together, I can see Charlotte as well. But I would give the floor to Veerle and give some takeaways from the Bee Trust consumer workshop. So we're still consumer oriented, and it's not as research. I mean, we didn't ask 1,000, 2,000 actually, but we had some on-site workshop. So please, Veerle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susanne. Good morning, everybody, from my side. So yeah, in the BeTrust project, we are also a partner, and we are basically responsible for the setup of the co-creation trajectories we are elaborating and rolling out in this project. And mind you, we will also do, but this is for the future, quantitative analysis, and where we will interact also with a few thousand consumers. But now we first focus on what we did with the co-creation sessions and on the results. And afterwards, after my presentation, also Nina from Flanders Foods will come, and she will focus on the farmers who we also interacted with. But first, so on the consumer co-creation session we have set up on these new genomic techniques, or climate resilient crops, like we called them. So why do we bother to actually involve consumers and discuss with them in detail in these co-creation sessions? Because, like already said by Laura, consumers play a really important role in acceptance of this technology. So it in the end, it concerns the food they eat. It's about our environment. It can impact our environment or affect our environment. It can influence even social structures. And they do hear about these techniques, new genomic techniques, CRISPR-Cas and things like that on social media. Some things are true, some things are not true, and these things form their opinion. So they are getting opinionated about it. So yeah, they have to buy it in the end, quite literally and also figuratively speaking. So that's why it's important to, like already said by Laura, to really involve them in the development of these techniques, etc. So why did we set up co-creation sessions? So we didn't do a survey at this point yet, but we did set up a co-creation session because this is an ideal methodology to truly understand trust issues that they might have and also acceptance issues. So we really try to dig into what forms their opinions and really get a better insight in yeah, how do they perceive this technique? What do they associate with it, etc. And also, what are their main concerns and how can they be addressed? And then together with them, we try to find solutions. Also, we focused a lot on communication. How do they understand things? What wordings do they use? What wordings do they understand? And what wordings do resonate with them? And how do they come across? So these are the things that we focused on a lot in this co-creation session. So to really set up a dialogue with the consumers, and if they said specific things, to be able to dive deeper into it and really dig, like, okay, what do you mean? How do you understand this, etc. And really try to dig for solutions. So we invited a group of about 15 people with different backgrounds, mostly without scientific background. So we truly focused on okay, no scientific background, both men and women. So we try to balance gender from different age groups, of course, also really important. Both conservative and progressive profiles. We assess that due to their buying habits, etc. And yeah, this is a bit of a side note. It's fair to say that you only can get people around the table that are interested in the food they eat. It's really quite impossible to really get people around the table who just don't care about what food they put in their mouth. They exist as well, to be honest. So so people who were around the table who we had this co-creation session with were people who are interested in the food they eat. Yeah, how did we set it up further? When it comes to the communication, when we invited the people, we took a lot of consideration and carefully communicated towards them to not only attract the advocates, yeah, both the pro and the con, but to really try to engage the nuanced majority, which is the largest group. You don't hear them a lot, but they are the most important group and the largest group. And we invited them to a brainstorm, an open dialogue. And in our prior communication, so the mailings we sent out, we tried not to prime them or steer them in a specific direction. So to get their first and honest opinions on the table at the beginning of the session. We also take a lot of attention to the environment, the atmosphere that we try to create. So we always provide, it's a nice, relaxing atmosphere. We provide food and drinks. So it's like that people are like in a restaurant or in a pub discussing a specific topic. So this is really important to really get their honest opinions and ideas out of it. And also the exercises that we set up together with them. So there was a complete setup with carefully selected exercises. So there was a mix of individual exercises, but also plenary discussions in small groups, etc. So to have a good grasp of the ideas and opinions of the people present. We also always worked around 5 central questions. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but it was focusing on getting their perception on the specific case. Also, what the impact of the technology is, how they perceive the positive and the negative traits or the risks that are maybe connected with it. Alternative ways to solve the same problem. Sometimes there are other ways of solving the issues we are facing, and what are the risks and benefits linked to that. What are the mitigation measures and are they adequate according to them? And how should we communicate about it? What messages resonate? What wording should we use? And through which channels or who should communicate, also important. And this all disguised, these central questions were all disguised in a whole setup with different exercises on scenario exercises, open discussions, association exercises, etc. Final slide on the setup to dig in, and afterwards we dig into the results. We always do the setup like this, that we in the beginning really capture their virgin ideas and opinions without any prior information, and then gradually through the session we give more information on why is this a possible solution, or why is this a relevant solution to tackle the problem we are facing or problems we are facing. We always explain the technology in quite a lot of detail, but in layman's terms, of course. And we always also present the risks, the mitigation measures, and the benefits. All this in layman's terms, so they can truly understand what the technology is about and how they can come across it. Everything is stated as neutral as possible. So during the moderation of the session and the presentations, we state neutral as much as possible. The only thing, we gave them as much as information as possible so they can really make an informed opinion or can form an important opinion about it. But when people stated really things that were scientifically untrue, then we of course try to tackle that. But otherwise their arguments were never dismissed or anything like that. So that was also an important thing to say. Okay, now enough on how we set this up, but I think it's important that you know how we did it. Then maybe the main results we got out of it, out of this co-creation session. A first thing that we noticed is, and that was like, okay, yeah, true, absolutely true, is that, okay, we focus with NGTs on climate adaptation. We try to adjust these plans to climate change. But then somebody said, like, okay, we should not forget about climate mitigation. No, it should not divert our efforts, etc., from the government, also from industry, etc., to really tackle this climate problem as well. So it's not a reason to postpone climate mitigation intervention. So that's, we thought it was a really important remark, because indeed, yeah, it is a very good point. And yeah, climate adaptation of these crops, it is in the end a band-aid, to be honest. And we should also treat it as such. It is important that we do it because we are far gone when it comes to climate change, but it is in the end a band-aid. Yeah, people still don't want to believe the scale of the problem. They get bombarded with all these messages that something is going wrong with our food production, and that we have serious things to adapt and mitigate. But yeah, people still have that's why I use this image, a very romantic view on how things were done in the past. And they still think that we, using agroecological principles, vertical farming, organic farming, things like that, can still basically solve and also we can adapt to the issues we are facing. So they still underestimate it, unfortunately. And consumers do want to adapt. They do want to eat less meat and eat more seasonally and things like that. But on the other hand, adapting is always difficult. It's difficult to give up freedom and things like that, and they still want the freedom of choice. They still want to go to the supermarket and see this whole range of products, etc. But on the other hand, some of them do realize that the current situation is a little bit decadent. That we maybe have too much choice. Eating tomatoes all through winter is maybe not the best thing to go for. So maybe when going to the supermarket, they still see this whole range of products being present, tomatoes in winter, tropical fruits, etc. So maybe they are not confronted with the consequences of what is happening sufficiently yet. Prices have gone up, but nevertheless, yeah. Next point, I'm speeding up a little bit because time is running. Yeah, that's something that they said as well, and I think it's a good point they have, is that the finger is sometimes pointing too much to the farmers and the consumers. So consumers sometimes have unsustainable behavior, and they can have a huge impact if they behave or make the more sustainable choice. But on the other hand, it's often difficult because the system makes it hard for them to make sustainable choices. It's often not the most evident one. It's the most expensive one to make a sustainable choice, or needs more time, more effort, etc. So then they won't do it in the end. Also, when it comes to the farmers, they are basically stuck in a system where they even struggle to get a fair price for the products they produce, and they made huge investments. So that is not really fair sometimes. So the biggest difference in the end can be made by the players who have the biggest margins and the biggest profits, being the industry and the retailers sometimes. So in the end, they are the ones that decide on the product range that are being given or presented to the consumers, and they have the power to really make the sustainable choice the easiest one and the most evident one. Often, of course, the system is a bit sick and it needs to be adapted. Consumers are aware of that as well. But yeah, retailers or industry are fear of profit loss, etc., and reduction in their market share. So what the consumers also said during this session is that, yeah, regulations and interventions from the authority are crucial in this aspect, and also cooperative actions. So to create a more level playing field and decrease the individual risk of the industry and the retail. So there they already point to the authorities who have a really important role to play in this perspective. Maybe coming back also still on this really romantic view that consumers have on how agriculture works. They do have this. They don't like scientists fiddling with their food. That was quite evident. But on the other hand, they do not realize that it has been done, like Nils already pointed out. It has been done for centuries, that the crops that are on the fields today are nothing like the wild varieties that are out there. If you see like corn, how it used to be, the wild varieties in comparison with what we have today on our fields is completely different. So the crops that we are producing on our fields today or breeding on our fields today are quite weak. And they need this interference of the farmer to make them survive. And then we made a parallel with like pedigree animals, which is basically a bit the same, that they are genetically different and they need to be need support. Yeah, also what an important aspect as well is how the end result compares to the wild varieties, to say. So somebody said like, okay, so you can't distinguish these NGTs from natural crops or wild varieties. So yeah, that's quite convincing to prove that they are harmless. Although they still think it's a little bit playing God, but if you can't detect the difference, it can't be all that bad, right? That's what somebody said. So this is also the end result. If it's not all that different, it can't be so bad after all. Yes, people, they see the advantages, but they do fear that the technology will be implemented pure for financial gain of especially biotech companies. They're a bit afraid of, at the cost of the environment, farmers, and in extension the consumers. So the idea of that biotech companies hold all the power, that's a really scary one. And quite a few of the participants remember the Monsanto story. So yeah, they are quite afraid of that, of the power in the hands of a few companies and that they control the whole food system. They don't like patents, and they want to avoid them because of monopolies being created. So they do look again at the authorities to implement strict measures and legislation to prevent from patents from being taken, monopolies from being installed. And this is really a crucial one because this came back also in other co-creation sessions on other cases, and is really a major issue for consumers. When it comes to these monopolies, they are really reluctant and scared about these things. And I do understand that, to be honest. Okay, I'm nearly there. Sorry, Nina. Participants, they are not aware of how strict the regulations of the EU actually are. They have good confidence in authorities in general, and specifically also in the European Commission, but they are not aware how strict the EU actually is, especially in comparison with other continents, US or Asia, etc. And they think that producers can basically do whatever they want. So they can add ingredients and additives like they feel, which is of course not true. We also said that is regulated very strictly. And they don't realize that most of their concerns they have are already being addressed by legislation and by authorities. So I think it's also important that to better communicate about this regulatory framework, to also communicate to consumers like, okay, or citizens, that it's an important aspect that is being tackled and that the Commission is really, or Europe is really strict about these things. So this is an important takeaway that we also saw in other sessions, that they do trust authorities, but they're not aware of the legislation. They also look at the scientific community, and they do trust science in this quite often, not so much by technological researchers, I'm sorry, but when environmental researchers and health researchers agree, they do largely accept it as true. Scientists, on the other hand, are very nuanced. They never will claim something as 100% safe, etc., which might be confusing for consumers and adds to the doubt and mistrust. But it's something scientists always do because nothing is 100%. So it's important to be, like also Laura said, to be transparent and communicate on the developments, what has been done to approve them, what tests have been done, how detailed science was on this, and how they are being implemented. And also communication is an expertise in itself. So maybe biotechnological researchers are not the best to communicate about it. Maybe they are too nuanced. On the other hand, when it comes to communication, when it's communicated by somebody with a scientific background, that is really truly convincing. So yeah, nearly there, sorry. So sometimes they also think like, is it not already here? So some of the consumers don't have such a romantic idea of our agricultural system. Not everybody is like that. Some think that it has been implemented for decades already in Europe, which is not true, but they do think it sometimes. And also, like already said, I think it was by Nils also, that we don't live on an island, and they are aware of that. And sometimes they think that these products that come in Europe, that they are already GMO. But okay, so and side note also, the fact that GMOs have been produced like for several decades already in the US is not a very reassuring argument. So yeah. This was also on the survey we did. I'm going to skip this one because I'm running a lot over time. So now I give the floor to Nina, who will talk about the farmers co-creation session.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Kellner, and I work as an innovation manager at Flanders Food. Just give me 8 more minutes, and I believe I can tackle my slides in that time. So if you're interested in these farmer co-creation sessions, please bear with me. Next slide, please. Okay, so why are these sessions so important? For the farmers, they actually play a critical role in the acceptance of this technology. And this is because it really concerns their livelihood, and they often feel like political decisions are being made above their head. They are not being heard, not being considered, and their input is not asked. So if we want a successful implementation of these technologies, it's really important to have their acceptance. Yes. Can you go back a slide? You skipped one. Yes. So when we communicate about these co-creation sessions, we really need to consider our communication. So this means that having an open discussion on biotechnology. So in the invitation, we mentioned biotechnology, but we kept it quite vague so that we would have some room for open discussions. We also mentioned that we were really interested in their views and their opinions on these topics, and we tried to remain as neutral as possible. Next to this, we made sure there was a relaxed atmosphere. So this we did by providing coffee and cake and also free tickets to Agri Flanders, which is an agricultural fair where this co-creation session was held. And next to this, we made sure there was an unbiased and open dialogue where everyone felt safe to express their opinions. Yes. So how was the session set up? So we actually started with framing the workshop. So this is one of the most important parts. We mentioned that the session was done in the framework of a European project. We made our intentions clear. So we said that we are drafting a method to better include the voices of the public. And then we also mentioned that we really wanted to know the real opinion of the farmers on this technology of NGTs. And we were definitely not there to sell these technologies to them, because this is very important to mention so that they know why they are there and that they feel safe to speak with us. Then we had the first exercise. So there were 2 timeline exercises, one for future and one for the past. So what we did, we made 2 timelines and we asked farmers to mention relevant trends, scientific breakthroughs, innovations and legislations of the past 50 years and also of the future 50 years. So this was kind of a warm-up exercise, but it really the future perspective gave us a lot of insights into how farmers see the perspective of their future, and also to see what advancements they hope for and what advancements they really worry about. So after this first exercise, we had an association exercise, which was really to grasp the general perception of the farmers on NGTs. So out of this exercise, we could conclude that most of them knew what NGTs were, and a few of them had never heard of them. But everyone, of course, knew the GMOs. Then we had some time to explain to them the difference between these NGTs and these GMOs, but it was very short and very brief because we really wanted to see what their perceptions were without too much information. Then we had a risk-benefit exercise, which really tried to grasp the farmers' perceived risks and benefits of these technologies and try to differentiate them with our evidence-based risks and benefits that we found in literature. Something that's maybe important to stress is that not everything that we found in literature also made the farmers feel threatened. So, for example, there was a risk on the detection of these NGTs, that they're not being detected. And the farmers did not feel this was a risk, since they just said it's a problem for the people who want to detect it, not for us. Yes. So here you can see some of the results of how farmers see their future. When they talk about their future, they think of AI, robots, and drones helping them with administration, with sowing, with spraying. And they also mentioned new crops. So new crops, which means that NGTs is something that they see in their future. Also, the mental health of the farmer furtherly decreasing was mentioned as a trend, and they will also be increasingly restricted by legislation. And then they also predicted that many companies will stop due to the aging farmer population, and only big companies will remain due to a lot of fusions. So, as long as it's cheap, the consumers will buy it, and the same goes for the farmers. So the farmers actually identified that NGTs would mean higher yields to them, probably, and also higher and better stability of yields, and this way also a better stability of income. And it would also reduce the needs for pesticides, something that's already a bit skeptical. So we can conclude that if this technology has clear advantages, it will be much easier for farmers to have a positive opinion of the technology, which is quite obvious, of course. Next slide. So there's a general support from the farmers for NGTs, but when they look at the EU's regulatory framework, it is seen as slow and cautious. And this regulatory uncertainty really creates doubt with farmers if this technology will ever be applied in Europe, and also creates some acceptance issues because they start to wonder, is there something wrong? And next to this, they also expressed regulatory differences between countries and fear of administrative burdens to be a concern of them. And lastly, also, there was a really strong stance on monopolization and patenting. So everyone really agreed that large corporations who will dominate the market is something that they really are not okay with. And this was really agreed upon by all farmers. So farmers see the advantages, but are scared that it will be used by the wrong parties and for the wrong reasons. So this was something that was also mentioned with the consumers. So farmers worry that this technology will primarily serve the financial interests of biotech companies. Scenarios like Monsanto were mentioned immediately, and they really hope that strict regulations will be put in place to prevent this excessive patenting, monopolies, and unfair market control. So this is like the main concern of them. So from field to finance, what's the bottom line? So as I mentioned before, they really see a higher yield or more stable yield as one of the advantages, and also the more stable income that can come with that. But when talking about new business opportunities and profitability, they expressed some concerns that the initial costs may be quite high and the benefits would only come later. Some farmers also mentioned or worried that NGTs would maybe never be really cheap, especially considering if there would be industry control and the expertise of these NGTs would be concentrated within these large seed companies, then they really have concerns about how accessible these seeds would be and what the costs for the farmers would be. And then we have the last slide on just the survey results of what the farmers found of these sessions. But since you will all receive the presentation slides, I guess you can just dive into that if you have some questions on that. Thank you for bearing with me, and sorry for the rush.
Nina, you were rushing through. I hope you take a deep breath, and I hope you all also took a deep breath and consumed all the information and insight. I think if there's one line to learn from this, it's information, awareness raising campaigns, both from, this is one of the, we have 2 projects here who's raising more awareness of the use of new technologies and new innovative solution to not save the whole world, but a bit of it. The consumers are skeptical, so are the farmers, but I think step by step, maybe baby step, and also the EU has to step up, but of course it has to be safe. Trust is the whole key word here. So on this note, are there any more questions? I know we are terribly over time. I'm so pleased that so many of you stayed despite of the delay, but that's a lesson learned also from our side. But I want to thank all the excellent speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, and thank you to all the participants for coming to the screen today, this morning, and listen to all the great presentation. I would like to just do a little promotion, just very, very, very quickly. Exactly, the next masterclass is on the 3rd of April, and there we will be focusing on biofertilizers and biostimulants. So you can register at the forum at the World Lab. You will receive these all the presentations afterwards, and you will also be invited to by the system or the forum, the community platform, automatically. So I can see there was one. The presentation is recorded, and it will also be uploaded to the community platform. So someone would like to say, Kelly May Frayne, you have your hand. Oh, was it a hand or
Sorry,
was it a reaction?
you answered my question. Thank you.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. So with these words, I would like to wish you a very nice day. Go out there, the spring is there. Take a deep breath, and hopefully see you again for the next masterclass. Thank you so much for attending.
Yes, thanks to all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.